If you were trapped in a rundown apartment building that was overrun by an army of massive man-eating spiders, what the hell would you do? Caleb here has just brought home some creepy new pet, but what he doesn't realize is that he's about to unleash a horde of the biggest spiders that you've ever seen into his apartment. And they're going to turn the entire building into their very own hunting ground. I hope you're not feeling arachnophobic, because we're here to break down the mistakes made, what you should do, and how to beat the spider-pocalypse in Infested. This apartment is about to have the worst bug problem ever. Somewhere far out in the desert, a beat-up pickup truck full of poachers is out hunting for a deadly exotic creature. Grabbing their equipment out of the truck, the men split up to search the dunes for any sign of what they're after. Most of the places that they check turn up nothing, but after a while, one of the men finally sees what they're looking for. Turning over a stone, he finds a large burrow that's lined up with spider webs all the way around, and urgently shouts for his buddies to come running over. The others quickly start pumping the chamber full of gas, hoping to force the spiders out. And once they're finished, the first guy leans in closer to see what's going on down there, but that was his biggest mistake. All of a sudden, a spider the size of his hand comes rocketing up out of there and bites the guy straight on the neck, causing him to immediately fall down backwards as he starts writhing on the ground in pain. At the same time, dozens more of the spiders come crawling up out of the hole, and instead of stopping to help their friend, the others start scrambling to catch as many of the spiders as they can in a bunch of these tiny containers. It's only after they've filled up every single one of them that somebody finally does something about their friend. But instead of trying to save him, one of the men only picks up a machete and brutally puts him out of his misery. Okay, yikes. That looked a bit painful, and something tells me that Spider-Man here isn't going to be getting any superpowers this time around. So, if I had to offer his buddies some advice, my suggestion would be to find a new side hustle before they get the old machete treatment next. The spiders that we're seeing on screen here are actually a real species called the giant huntsman spider. And with the word giant literally in their name, you should already know that just one look at these things would have most people reaching for the nearest flamethrower. Believe it or not, the director actually used 200 real spiders live on set, and if that's not nightmare fuel, then I can't tell you what is. They're the world's largest spider by leg span, and although they don't really get as big as some of the ones that we'll be seeing later on, they still regularly reach lengths of up to a foot long. Yeah, that's a big old no from me, dog. During the day, these spiders prefer to seek shelter within caves, tree bark, crevices, or any other dark, secluded spot where they can rest up and stay safe from predators. Kinda like you in your mom's basement. No, seriously. At night, they rely on their keen senses, sharp reflexes, and pants-crapping speed to hunt down their prey, which mostly consists of smaller insects, instead of trying to trap food in their webs like many other species. Giant huntsman spiders also have excellent eyesight and can even detect tiny vibrations straight through solid surfaces, allowing them to track down food and avoid danger even in low-light conditions. Although their bite is venomous, they don't pose any real danger to humans except for the sudden need to change your underwear. In reality, a bite from one wouldn't be much worse than a wasp sting, and should clear up on its own within a few days unless you happen to have a severe allergic reaction. If you want to avoid ending up like this guy, then the best thing that you can do is just leave these spiders alone. They won't mess with you if you don't mess with them, so don't go digging around in any of their nests, and you should be perfectly fine. Now, although the giant huntsman is what they're based on, this species must be some kind of super spider, as whatever happened to our boy here would seem to show. It turns out that these are actually the most dangerous arachnids on the planet, and it won't be long until an even bigger dumbass accidentally releases them into an entire unsuspecting apartment building. the spiders are taken back to town and sold off to the underground exotic animal trade, making their way around the world until one of them ends up in the back room of a convenience store somewhere in a neighborhood near Paris. One day, a local entrepreneur named Caleb comes in looking for some jewelry, but the owner Ali refuses to show him the good stuff because he knows that he's been reselling it on the side. Frustrated, Caleb swears that he's moved on to selling sneakers for now, and after promising him that it's only for a gift, he finally convinces Ali to take him in the back room where he keeps the real high-quality merchandise. Besides just jewelry, he's got a whole shelf full of strange little critters, and the big nasty spider that just came in immediately catches Caleb's eye. He ends up buying both, some earrings and the spider, even though the guy can't tell him anything about it, and brings them back to his apartment that's in a nearby town. Walking inside, he runs into the building manager, Mrs. Zhao, as she's taking out the trash, and yells at a group of younger guys who were just watching that they should help her out next time. Instead, the kids set off a firecracker just to mess with them, but Caleb catches one of them named Musa and takes his bag away, handing the fireworks over to Mrs. Zhao and telling the kid to beat it. Before going upstairs, Caleb heads down to his storage unit in the building's creepy basement, where he catches his friend and business partner, Mathis, stealing bikes from the neighborhood kids. Frustrated, he yells at Mathis for stealing from the locals and reminds him that he needs to focus on their sneaker trading business instead if they're ever going to make their money the honest way. Checking through their list of orders, Mathis says that one of their customers, Tumani, is looking for a pair of Nike TNs, but when Caleb goes to grab the box, he notices that water has been leaking into them from a drip in the ceiling. The shoes are still in perfect shape, but Caleb won't sell them to a customer unless the box is perfect too. So he sends Mathis to look for a new one before they tell Tumani that they're in. Upstairs, Caleb finds his sister Manon doing loud renovations in their bathroom. She's been constantly trying to fix up the place to sell since their mother passed away sometime 2 years ago. But Caleb thinks it's heartless of her to be moving on so soon. What annoys him even more is that she's always going into his room and unplugging the heat lamps for his variety of exotic critters, who he likes to collect because they remind him of his childhood. Taking the new spider out of his bag, he decides to name her Rihanna, and gives her a shoebox that he lines with a bunch of toilet paper as a temporary home until he can make her a better one. But what he doesn't realize is that he's just signed the death warrant of everyone in the entire building. Out in the kitchen, Caleb confronts his sister for messing with his stuff, shouting that his pets could die if they don't have a proper heat source. She complains that all he's been doing has been running up their electricity bill, and says that he'll never have the money to buy the apartment like he plans, causing Caleb to call her selfish as he leaves for a going-away party for their upstairs neighbor, Claudia. Meanwhile, while everyone in the building is busy minding their own business, Caleb's new spider burrows through the side of the shoebox and disappears into his room, about to go on a rampage of destruction that's worse than anything that he could possibly imagine. Okay, well, isn't this just fan-tastic? Now we have to burn the entire building down. I'm just gonna keep it a buck with you, Caleb. You seem like an alright kid, but if I was one of your neighbors right now, I'd want your ass sentenced to the electric chair for this one. And even then, I still don't feel like it would be enough of a punishment. I honestly don't even think I need to say what we're already all thinking, but you know what? I think I will. Caleb, my boy, you, sir, have tremendously f***ed up. I know that things have probably been pretty hard these last few years after what happened with your mom and everything. And if collecting giant, venomous spiders makes you feel better about it, then, well, that's really none of anyone else's business. Until you accidentally release one of them into the rest of the building where people live with their f***ing families. Then it becomes a problem. You see, this right here is exactly why you aren't supposed to just go around buying these exotic creatures that you know absolutely nothing about. You need to understand the laws, the safety risks, and all of the proper care needs for the animal if you're going to give it a good home and avoid situations just like this. There's a reason why you can't find Spiderzilla here down at your local pet store, and that's because their habitat needs make them extremely difficult to keep in captivity. On top of that, purchasing killing wild-caught animals only helps to support the illegal pet trade, and the overexploitation of these predators can have a severe negative impact on the entire ecosystem. So if conservation is what you're going for, then this definitely isn't the way to do it. I might be able to let it slide if you'd at least taken the time to put her in a proper enclosure, but a shoebox? Really, man? That might work for a normal spider, but Rihanna here? Let's not forget that you have no idea just how dangerous your new pet could really turn out to be, but you left the lives of everyone in the building up to a single piece of flimsy cardboard. And now, that decision is about to backfire extraordinarily. If you would have done your research, then you would have known that it would only be a matter of time before the spider decided to find a better place to live. And now, whatever happens next is going to be on you and your sister's hands. But you have absolutely no idea just how bad things are about to get. This entire building is about to turn into an arachnophobe's very own version of hell. And once people start dropping like flies, one thing is going to become abundantly clear. Caleb, buddy, you have seriously f***ed up. Later that night, Caleb returns to his bedroom only to find that the spider has completely disappeared from the shoebox. Panicking, he immediately starts searching every square inch of the room for any signs of her, but comes up empty-handed no matter where he looks. As he flips over a shadow box display of preserved insects, he discovers a sort of web cocoon wrapped around one of the specimens. Thinking nothing of it, he tosses the cocoon into an empty shoebox and shoves it under the bed. But with the spider herself still on the loose, Caleb decides that he'd rather sleep out on the couch in the living room for the night. Late the next morning, Caleb wakes up to the sounds of loud construction coming from the bathroom, where he finds his ex-best friend Jordy, his girlfriend Lila, who's friends with Manon, and his buddy Mathis, all helping his sister fix up the place. They start roasting Caleb here for sleeping in so late, and he decides that he better leave them all alone, heading down to the parking garage to give Tumani his pair of sneakers instead. The man is thrilled to see him and starts celebrating now that he can throw his old busted pair away, but that's when they're confronted by their asshole neighbor, Gilly, who's convinced that Caleb's sneaker business is all just a front for selling illicit substances. After telling Gilly to beat it, Tumani heads to the building's trash room and gets rid of his old pair, but as he's been putting on his new sneakers, he's suddenly nipped on the thumb by Caleb's spider that's been hiding out in one of the shoes. Annoyed, he peeks inside to get a look at what bit him, and the spider suddenly starts crawling right up his arm, so he quickly swats it down and splatters the bug with his shoe. But what he doesn't realize is that by then, it's already too late. All of a sudden, hundreds of baby spiders emerge from the shoe and start crawling all over his body, escaping into the corners of the room as they begin to infest the entire building. Back at his apartment, Caleb finds Jordy and the others looking through his bedroom and roasting him for his odd taste in pets. All the while, he's constantly getting calls from Tumani, but ducks them, thinking that whatever he's calling about must be no big deal. On their way out, Manon notices Caleb blocking the gap under his bedroom door with a towel, but only sighs and ignores whatever he's doing for now. Meanwhile, Tumani is in his own apartment fighting for his life as the bite from the spider causes strange boils to appear all over his body. Noticing that Caleb is calling him back, he tries desperately to pull himself over to the phone, only to knock a bunch of glass off of the kitchen counter and fall down into the broken shards as he finally succumbs to the bite. Okay, I guess this guy would have been better off keeping those old sneakers after all, huh? Tumani here might have been the first victim, but now that these spiders are loose in the basement, nobody in this building is safe, and it all comes down to being Caleb's fault. Now, I would never say that dipping out of there to go to sleep on the couch wasn't a perfectly viable option, but the problem was that Caleb failed to think about the bigger picture here. And if he would have just thought things through a little better, then he might have prevented this whole catastrophe from ever happening. Instead of hoping that the problem would just work itself out, he needed to take immediate action to stop the spider from getting loose. I mean, right away he should have warned his sister so that she could also be on the lookout. Then he needed to completely seal off any possible ways for the spider to get out of his bedroom to prevent it from escaping into the rest of his apartment. The one thing that he did right was checking areas where the spider might be. The only problem was that he never checked inside of Tumani's shoes. And knowing that this species of spider prefers dark and closed spaces, it actually makes a lot of sense that that's where she chose to hide. One other thing that he could have done was to try and set a trap for the spider or lure it out using live insects as bait. Then he could have captured it into a container if he wanted to keep it alive, or trapped it on a sticky surface if all he cared about was making sure that it got caught. Of course, if none of that worked, then he could have tried calling pest control or a local exotic pet expert to help him out. Although Caleb didn't find the spider, he did find something that's arguably much worse. That weird little web cocoon. And if he knew anything about this species, then he would have known that he was looking at an egg sac. During the last stage of their reproduction process, giant huntsman spiders lay an oval-shaped egg sac made of spider silk in a secluded crevice or other protected location like the shadow box that we saw here. We're not just talking about one egg either. When these eggs finally hatch, you're gonna have anywhere from like a dozen to several hundred baby nightmares on your hands. The good news is that it's supposed to take at least 2 weeks before they hatch, which would mean that Caleb still has plenty of time to chuck that egg sac into a fire and forget about it. But these spiders aren't playing by the rules. And within just a few hours, we already have a huge swarm of them running around this whole building. What's even worse is that these spiders are also able to speedrun the maturing process. And even though it should take about 2 years for them to reach full adulthood, they're going to grow into preposterous sizes in just a matter of hours. So if you think that things are bad now, then just wait and see what's about to happen next. As for Tumani, the first thing that he should have done after being bitten was to wash the bite with soap and water to prevent an infection. Most spider bites aren't dangerous to humans, but he still should have monitored his symptoms, and the moment that he started to have a severe allergic reaction, he needed to stop blowing up Caleb's phone and call a damn ambulance right away. If you're ever in this situation and you have the chance, you should try to get a picture of the dead spider so that the responders will know exactly what species bit you. They'll most likely treat you with epinephrine, give you some fluids, and monitor your condition until the venom has safely passed through your system, which shouldn't take longer than a few days at most. A little while later, Mathis and Jordy run into some of the old folks in the stairwell who say that they're worried because Tumani's dog has been barking non-stop, but he won't answer his door. In the hallway, they find Caleb standing outside of the man's apartment with a few of the other residents, all trying to figure out what could have happened to their neighbor. Finally, Gilly here decides to kick his way in, but when they see what's been waiting for them on the other side, they all immediately wish that they'd never even looked. The police arrive to investigate the scene, informing the others that they can go back to their apartments for now, but saying that nobody is allowed to leave the building out of fear that Tumani here might have been patient zero for some sort of deadly virus. Gilly immediately starts accusing Caleb of selling the man some bad stuff, but he insists that he's completely innocent, and the police step in to break them up before the argument turns into a massive brawl. Meanwhile, Mrs. Zhao takes her cleaning supplies down to the basement, where she notices the insane amount of cobwebs everywhere and quickly rushes out of the room. For a moment, it looks like she's gone, but a minute later, she returns with 2 cans of bug spray and starts airing the place out, causing the hundreds of spiders to escape into the vents. Upstairs, Lila is washing her hands in the bathroom sink when she hears the vent cover fall to the floor. Grabbing a step stool, she reaches up on her tippy toes and tries to put it back into place, but ends up losing her balance and crashing down into the shower, injuring herself in the process. As she's picking herself up, she notices a strange motion coming from behind the towel that's hanging on the door, and when she goes to have a look, one of the spiders emerges from inside and crawls right up her arm, forcing her to retreat back into the shower. Hearing the commotion, Jordy comes with a glass and a sheet of paper and starts trying to capture the spider alive, but he gets so freaked out by its size every time that he gets close that he hesitates and misses at the last second. By now, Caleb and the others are all watching from the doorway as Jordy tries and fails to trap the spider in the cup a few more times. times, only for it to slip around him and take cover underneath the sink. Growing frustrated, Jordy decides that he's done playing nice and starts trying to crush the spider with a broom. But just when they're all thinking that he got it, the little freak comes lunging up the broomstick straight towards him. With the spider now latched onto the outside of the shower, Jordy slams it as hard as he can with a towel and starts stomping it out on the ground. But when he looks to confirm the kill, an entire swarm of baby spiders comes crawling out from underneath, and even more of them start pouring out of the shower drain. Realizing that they're outnumbered, Jordy grabs Lila and rushes her out of the room, and they all start sealing the bathroom door up with duct tape, determined to keep the spiders trapped inside. But what they don't know yet is that they've already taken over the entire building. Okay, man, now would be a really bad time to remember that you left your phone in the bathroom, am I right? Mrs. Zhao here had the right idea, and she might have been the real MVP of this whole situation if she hadn't made one crucial mistake. By trying to solve the problem without really knowing how bad it was, she ended up pushing the spiders deeper into the air vents, and accidentally made things worse. A better strategy would have been to seal off any vents, doorways, or other pathways that led into the rest of the building before going on the attack. That way, she could have kept the spiders contained down in the basement until she was sure that she'd actually gotten rid of them all. If she'd taken a flashlight and looked around the place, then the sheer number of spiders and giant cobwebs all over the walls would have made it clear that she was heavily outnumbered. Plus, just putting 2 and 2 together with what happened to Tumani is evidence enough that they could be incredibly dangerous, even if she didn't fully know what kind of species that she was dealing with yet. All things considered, the best decision of all would have been to get the hell out of there and let the professional exterminators deal with it. But unfortunately now, it's much too late for that. As for our friends up in the apartment, Lila's lucky that she didn't bust her ass falling into the shower. She gets an A for effort, but maybe she should just ask someone taller to help her out next time instead of almost breaking her neck fixing an air vent. Obviously, anybody is going to completely lose it if a spider that big suddenly comes crawling up their arm, but after the initial shock of the encounter wore off, all that she needed to do was calmly make her way out of the bathroom without making any sudden movements that could provoke the spider to attack, and she would have been home free. Otherwise, just pick up a towel and squash the damn thing. Anything besides trapping yourself in the shower with it. Being a bug lover, Jordy here wanted to catch the spider and release it still alive at first. But once they started coming out from the drain and under the towel, I'd be doing a combination of a sprint and the Irish jig for the door, while trying to stomp as many of them out as humanly possible. Now that the spiders have taken over the bathroom, sealing off that area was a good place to start, but after seeing what happened to Tumani, I sure as shit wouldn't be stopping there. This situation has already gone way further than it ever should have, so if it were me, the next thing that I'd be doing is calling the authorities to let them know what's going on, and then trying to get the hell out of this building by any means necessary. After sealing the door up, the others start asking Caleb if he knows anything about the spiders, and although he tries to play dumb at first, the overwhelming evidence eventually forces him to admit that it was his. The thing is though, he says that he only bought one spider, and that the one in the bathroom was much bigger than his. Back in his room, Mathis suggests that Caleb's spider must have had babies, and that they grew to this huge size as a way to defend themselves from their new predators, the humans who live there. Sure enough, when they open the box where Caleb put the cocoon, they find that it's full of live baby spiders and immediately seal the lid with duct tape so that they can't get out. While Mrs. Zhao is cleaning up downstairs, she finds one of the enormous spiders dead on the floor and notices a team of police officers locking the building down for a temporary quarantine. Following the cobwebs along the hallway, she lifts up a ceiling tile and starts clearing the area with more of her bug spray, but when she looks up through the hatch to check out the scene, one of the spiders suddenly leaps straight onto her face, causing her to slip off of the ladder and fall down the staircase into the basement below. Caleb and the others are still in his apartment, now with every possible vent and drain sealed up with tape to stop any more spiders from getting in. Jordy, Lila, and Manon decide that they want to try getting out of the building, But Caleb and Mathis are convinced that the police won't do anything to help, and refuse to leave their neighbors to fend for themselves while they all escape to safety. Reaching a compromise, the two of them decide that they're going to hit the hallways to try warning as many people as possible, promising Jordy that after 15 minutes they'll all try to get out of the building together. Still clueless about what's going on, Musa here is lifting weights in his room and flexing to himself in the mirror when he spots a spider the size of his head crawling along the wall behind him. Caleb and Mathis are actually right outside of his door trying to warn him, but his music is so loud that he can't hear them knocking. That's when Musa catches the spider clinging on the opposite side of the room and throws a kick at it so hard that he ends up putting his entire leg straight through the wall. Noticing the cobwebs on the other side, this idiot actually decides to stick his whole head in there for a better look, but the spiders immediately attack and start crawling all over his body. Okay, well, I guess the party's officially over for Masa here. But for the spiders, it looks like it's just getting started. What's crazy is that both Mrs. Zhao and Masa still might be alive right now if they hadn't made the same critical mistake of sticking their head directly into the spider zone, just like the guy who was attacked in the very beginning. For Caleb and the others, their ultimate goal once they've warned as many people as possible is to obviously get somewhere safe. The only problem is that they might run into more of these spiders on their way out. But there are ways that they can increase their chances of survival if they take some time to get prepared. First, they're going to want to avoid the spiders whenever possible, which means that they need to move quietly and calmly so that they don't trigger the creature's prey drive. Pulling several layers of socks over their shoes should help muffle the sounds of their footsteps, and they could also try throwing something noisy to distract the spiders if they need to get around them or lure them away from an important area. Eventually, they'll probably have to fight, so now would be a good time to grab the best weapons that they can find, something like a bat, a broomstick that they can sharpen into a spear, or a spray that they can use as a flamethrower would probably be ideal. I'd also try to cover up as much of my body as possible and use garbage bags and duct tape so that they can't make direct contact with my skin. And then stack extra layers of clothes on top to make it harder for their bites to pierce through. Since we know that the spiders prefer darkness, I'd try using flashlights offensively against them, and turning on all of the lights throughout the building to force them into hiding. Finally, besides just warning people, I'd try to get as many of them to join up with us as I could, because it never hurts to have some extra meat shields around, especially in a situation like this. Caleb and Mathis rush over to Claudia's apartment next. Still, Caleb's convinced that he can hear her TV playing on the other side, so instead of giving up, he throws his shoulder into the door and forces his way into the apartment. They find Claudia sitting on her couch, but she's already covered in spiderwebs, and doesn't even turn to look at the boys as they barge in. As Caleb nervously inches towards her, a bunch of the spiders suddenly emerge from her body, forcing him and Mathis to duck back into the hallway. There, they run into one of the older residents desperately begging for their help. But Caleb realizes that he's probably been infested with the spiders too and shouts at him to get back in his apartment, saying that it's already too late. Within minutes, the old man, Claudia, Masa, and another neighbor all fall victim to the infestation. They end up making it back to Caleb's apartment just as Jordy and the others come rushing out to warn them that the spiders were able to get inside the building by infecting Tumani's dog, Maggie. While they're arguing about where to go next, Gilly appears out of nowhere and starts beating them all down with a crowbar, forcing them all back into the apartment and demanding to see Caleb's room. Realizing that this could be their chance to get rid of him, Caleb allows the man to check inside. Sure enough, the neighborhood narc here finds the shoebox and cuts it open, only to be immediately swarmed by the spiders. As Caleb and the others escape into the hallway, Lila nearly has a panic attack when she sees how badly things have already gotten, but the others insist that they'll be spider food unless they keep moving. With Caleb leading the way, the group races down the stairs until the spiders eventually cut off their path out of the building, forcing them to circle down to the basement in hopes of escaping through the parking garage. There's just one problem. When they open the door to the storage hallway that connects the two areas, they see that it's already been turned into a full-on spider tunnel of death, with hundreds of the massive creatures crawling all over the walls and ceiling just waiting for them to try and sneak through. But with no other options, they decide that they have to go for it. They realize that the spiders stay motionless as long as the lights are on, but the switch is only on a 1-minute timer. So Manon decides that she's going to hold the switch while the others sneak across, and then follow after them as quickly as she can since she's the fastest one out of the group. The others aren't sure about how they feel about it, but Manon insists that she can get it done, so the rest of them pull up their hoods and start slowly making their way to the other side. As soon as they're safely on the other side, Manon starts to follow them through, but just as she's about to make it, the lights abruptly cut out. Grabbing her lighter, she uses the flame to light up her surrounding, but she's able to get away just in time. With everyone there, Jordy yanks open the door to freedom, but a police officer quickly pulls it shut from the other side, shouting that the building is still under quarantine. Caleb and Mathis start trying to force their way through, which causes the police officers to respond by filling the hallway with stun grenades and tear gas, leaving them with no other choice but to run back through the spider tunnel in the pitch darkness to escape. Okay. Somehow these morons have gotten themselves into the worst situation possible, and their biggest mistake was going into that tunnel of death without doing anything to get prepared. It's easy for me to say now, but you don't need to be able to predict the future to know that something could easily go wrong with everyone in the hallway, and the only source of light on a 1-minute timer. As soon as that light went out, it was obvious that there would be a spider feeding frenzy. So instead, they should have either tried tapping the switch to keep the lights on, sent one person to scout ahead first, or at least tried the door before the person maintaining their only source of light made the run. Pulling their hoods up was a good idea, but if there was ever a time to break out the anti-spider gear that we mentioned before, this would have been it. I would have also looked around for something flammable and tried setting the webs on fire first, or at least made some torches for everyone to hold as we passed through. Now their only option is to run back through the tunnel, and they really only have 2 ways to go about it. They might try taking it slow, trying not to get the spider's attention, but that. I'd be booking it out of there like a cartoon character and just praying that the spiders got somebody else first. The group somehow manages to make it to the other side, but while they're checking each other out for spiders in the hallway, Caleb suddenly realizes that Jordy isn't with them. He quickly rushes back into the tunnel, where he finds Jordy still alive but completely covered in webs. And as the spiders start coming after him next, Caleb has no choice but to leave his friend behind. At the same moment, Mathis sees more of the spiders crawling out of dead bodies that have been webbed up to the ceiling, forcing them to hide out in a nearby storage closet unless they want to be next. There's nothing that they can do besides sit and listen to Jordy's scream of agony. In the darkness, Mathis stumbles across the bag of fireworks that Caleb had taken off of Musa earlier that day, and this gives him an idea. While the others are all completely losing their minds, he decides that he's done running away from a bunch of spiders and says that they're going to use the supplies to fight their way to the roof, where they'll be able to signal for help. It isn't much of a plan, but it's the best that they've got, so with Mathis at the head of the group, they grab the bag and start using the torches to make their way back over to the stairs. After the first torch goes out, Mathis tells Caleb to grab another firecracker, but instead, he pulls a full-blown Molotov cocktail out of the bag. Lighting it, he tosses it down the hall towards the horde of spiders, but ends up hitting the floor right below them, accidentally causing them all to start coming straight towards him and his friends, and that's when all hell suddenly breaks loose. The plan instantly turns into everyone running for their lives, with Mathis using a hand crank flashlight to hold the spiders back until they're finally able to make it to the temporary safety of Gilly's apartment. For the moment, they're able to stop to catch their breath, but Mathis lost the bag of fireworks back on the stairwell, and now they're completely out of ways to make it to the top floor. Heartbroken, Caleb goes to check on Lila, but she promises him that she's going to be alright. She asks him why him and Jordy stopped talking, and Caleb explains that the two of them had a falling out over an accident as kids, which led to their friendship gradually falling apart until they eventually cut each other off. It's a good thing they got their chance to talk, because all of a sudden, a squad of police officers bursts into the room and orders all of them to stand back. For some reason, Caleb here immediately decides to start a fight with them before they're even able to have a civil conversation, causing the whole scene to erupt in a violent brawl that ends with him and his friends getting pepper sprayed, knocked out, and taken into custody by the boys in blue. Okay, at this point, I'm starting to think that Caleb is actually trying to get everyone killed. I'm not too sure what Mathis here was actually trying to accomplish by getting to the roof. Since the police already know that they're inside, nobody else will be able to help them as long as they have the building quarantined. Plus, they would have had to fight their way through like 15 floors of spiders just to get there. A better plan would have been to use the fireworks to fight their way to the lowest window possible and then try to climb out. The police couldn't stop them from doing it, which means that all they'd have to worry about is figuring out how to get down safely. I might try making a rope out of whatever materials that I could find, or just climbing down Assassin's Creed style. And I'm definitely not saying that it would have been easy, but whatever they did, it would have been better than going deeper into the building, that's for sure. No worries though, because the police are here and their problems are solved, right? Nope, they were literally the closest that they've ever been to rescue, and Caleb here decided to start a fight with them. Not a great time, buddy. Now he's going to be looking at a case, even if they somehow manage to get out of here alive, but they still have a long way to go. Caleb wakes up to find that they've all been taken out to the parking garage, where a larger team of officers is standing by to monitor the situation inside. They've been gradually killing the spiders off with insecticide, but have still never made an attempt to help the people stuck in their apartments, for fear that they'll accidentally release the creatures into the city. One of the officers comes and apologizes for how they've handled things, saying that it was all just a matter of procedure. But as soon as he's out of earshot, Mathis reveals that he was also bitten during the attack, and with only minutes left to live, he decides to come up with one last plan. Jumping to his feet, Mathis sneaks over and turns off the officer's emergency generator before throwing himself headlong at the man blocking the door, releasing the army of spiders into the garage. But now Caleb and the girls have a chance to escape. Within seconds, the situation escalates into full-blown chaos, and hundreds of spiders are swarming the garage. Caleb and Lila are able to take cover behind a nearby car and break him out of his zip ties. But Manon is still missing somewhere out there in the battle. Spotting her across the garage, Caleb manages to get Manon, but takes a bullet to the leg in the process, and the two of them end up taking cover inside the back of a nearby van, where she's able to stop the bleeding by wrapping his wound with a bungee cord. It's the perfect time for an emotional brother-sister moment where they put aside their differences and talk about their feelings. But it's rudely interrupted when a group of giant spiders starts climbing in to eat them alive. Just then, Lila starts blinding the spiders with her high beams, buying Caleb and Manon an opportunity to sprint over to her car. As soon as they're in, Lila throws the car into gear and starts speeding away towards the exit, but the only way out is to open the gate by hand. And there's a spider that's almost as big as the car itself blocking the path. Realizing that it won't attack him as long as he isn't a threat, Caleb bravely steps out of the car, and sure enough, the spider scuttles away without harming him, allowing him to open the gate and finally step out into the light of day. After the incident, a memorial is created nearby to honor all of those who didn't make it, and the government decides to destroy the entire building in order to contain the outbreak. Caleb goes out to the forest to hide a picture of him and Jordy as kids, knowing that he'll probably have to do some time in the slammer for his crimes. But while he's out there, one of the spiders suddenly appears on his shoulder, and he peacefully releases it back into the wild, having learned that sometimes it's better to leave these types of creatures where they belong. But what would you do? Spiders? Nah, that. But let us know down in the comments what you would have done. Thank you so much for watching. Leave a like and subscribe, and check out that How to Beat playlist for more videos just like this one. I'm the Guy. We'll see you in the next episode, and as always, have a damn good day.